And that very witness, John Malcolm, joins me now. Thanks for coming on The Beat.
It's my pleasure. Good to be with you.
Did you have a good time?
Well, it was largely ignored. I mean, John Dean got an awful lot of attention from the Republicans and the Democrats, and I didn't get asked a single question by a single Democrat. It seems that they wanted to hear what the other two prosecutors had to say and what John Dean had to say, but not what I had to say.
Well, as the Republican witness, we're interested, and we've been hearing from people on all sides of this. Let me play one of the more interesting but really disturbing in some ways claims that you made. Take a look.
It is almost invariably the case that someone attempting to obstruct an investigation also engages in other nefarious activities, such as destroying evidence, suborning perjury, bribing witnesses, or threatening them with bodily harm.
I thought you laid out the law quite clearly there, but you were implying that the president never did any of that. As you know, it's incontrovertible that he did that, some of which is, according to his own aides, quoted in the Mueller report, and some of which everyone remembers publicly, like telling people not to cooperate, calling people rats, raising the specter of threats to people's family about what could happen to them. Why did you choose to go that route when you know the president has done some of those things?
Well, let me begin by saying that I'm not here to defend the president's conduct. I am here to defend the rule of law. And I think that your characterization of the facts in the Mueller report are, with all due respect, somewhat hyperbolic. I mean, saying that somebody is a rat or somebody ought to cooperate or not cooperate, that's really no different, for instance, than what Bill Clinton did.
Okay,
with respect
well, but
to Jim
I'm not
McDougal,
doing a news
Susan
program
McDougal,
about the
Linda.
Clinton impeachment,
Well,
although
no,
if you want to do that
but
sometime, we can do that. And I appreciate your...
But there are parallels
sir,
there.
I'm hanging you up for a second. I appreciate you depicting the media as hyperbolic, but I didn't invite you on for media criticism. Let's go to the quote, and I'll let you respond,
okay.
Since you used the H word. Here is the Mueller report depicting the president telling Mr. McGahn to basically falsify records. The press reported the president directed McGahn to have the special counsel removed. Trump reacts by directing White House officials, tell McGahn to dispute the story, create a record stating he had not been ordered to have the special counsel removed.
Right.
Is that not evidence of Donald Trump trying to tamper with the evidence the special counsel was getting?
No. He didn't tell Don McGahn to go to the special counsel and lie. And saying something to the press to get him to defend himself is not telling him to lie. Don McGahn said, that's not my recollection. I'm not going to do it. The president didn't like it, but he didn't fire Don McGahn. There were no repercussions for that. When he went and spoke to the special counsel, he never told Don McGahn, now, whatever it is you do, Don, don't tell him about the conversation that we had about Jeff Sessions. So no, trying to, get a subordinate to go out and publicly defend him about the
So you're
president's
making a legal
recollection of
distinction.
events.
You're saying that lying to the public is different than lying to prosecutors. I think that's a fair point.
Yes.
But when you hear the reference to falsifying records, would that not be records that would be provided potentially to law enforcement?
He wasn't tampering with the record. He was asking him to create a record. And when he said, I'm not going to do it because that doesn't jive with my recollection of things, the president didn't like it, but there were no repercussions from that.
Well, create a false record, yes, sir?
He asked him to write what the president believed to be so, and McGahn said, I'm not going to do it because I don't believe it so. The president didn't like it, but he lumped it. He took it.
Okay, and I appreciate you making your case. Let me also ask you about the other piece, which was affecting witnesses. And this doesn't, you don't have to rely on the Mueller report. Americans have now become accustomed to the way the president talks about potential witnesses. Take a listen, for example, to him discussing his former lawyer, Michael Cohen's father-in-law.
He should give information maybe on his father-in-law, because that's the one that people want to look at, because where does that money? That's the money in the family. And I guess he didn't want to talk about his father-in-law.
Don't those kind of public comments also go to the president's state of mind and intent to impact witnesses, in your view?
Well, Michael Cohen was already cooperating, so it's hard to see how that statement could impact on anything. Again, I'm not defending the president's conduct. The president does stuff all the time that is uncivil, intemperate, and impulsive, and stuff that I wouldn't do. But there's a difference between doing stuff that's impulsive and uncivil and doing something that's criminal.
Right. And I appreciate the distinction and your candor about what you say is some perhaps mistakes or uncivil comments, as you put it. Stay with me. I want to bring in another former federal prosecutor like yourself, John Flannery. John, your views.
my views are that we have another mouthpiece for Trump. And the reason is, I believe, based on his writings, your writings, John, is that you believe the president can do anything and that he should be insulated from the Congress and that he can't obstruct justice, as John Dowd said. And you pretty much said in your memo and your statement yesterday before the Congress. I wish I'd been there to ask you questions about your belief that our president should basically be a monarch. You cited Alexander Hamilton in your address, who in that particular publication, number 70 of the Federalist Papers, spoke about how wonderful dictators are, and we shouldn't get in their way because there are things that they have to do for us.
Well, let me let
and you're
John
saying
in.
that about this president.
I love
Ridiculous.
getting constitutional. John, you cited Hamilton, though, for the argument that a president shouldn't always have to worry that his government actions could wind him up in court. Your
That
response?
is, of course, correct. I mean,
Well, then
with
what
all
about
due,
an
Wait, I'm
impeachment?
going to
Doesn't
Malcolm.
that
I'm
take
going to
up time?
Malcolm.
with
Let him
all due
respond.
respect, I don't work for the Trump administration. I haven't worked for the Trump administration, and I was in the Department of Justice for 10 years, and I have never said anything along the lines of the characterizations that were just given by this other person, Alexander
Well, just read
Hamilton.
your own statement. Read your own statement.
I would invite you, please, to put out on MSNBC's website my statement for others to read. Please
I don't have
do
to.
that.
It's everywhere.
Well,
Great.
yeah, it's
Alexander Hamilton, in Federalist number 70, talked about the need to have a president who can act with alacrity and dispatch and verve. And the reason I cited that is because you should not have a prosecutor second-guessing a president when a president is acting within his core powers under Article 2, such as appointing and removing officials and considering pardons.
Briefly,
wasn't upholding the
John
law.
Flannery. Briefly and civilly, since we're being
Yes,
civil.
sir. Yes, sir. Civilly, what that particular provision said was the Republic, said Hamilton, was obliged to take refuge in the absolute power of a single man under the formidable title of dictator. That is the provision you cited. Now, as for faithfully executing the law, a president abuses his power when he goes and pardons those who investigate him, those who would talk against him. He threatens them and exchanges pardons, like his conversation that he authorized John Dowd, no doubt, to have with Flynn.
Right. And Flannery and I have discussed some of that. Those are important points. Mr. Malcolm, you said you didn't get questions, or at least a lot of them yesterday. You got some here. You're welcome to come back again. I have to fit in a break. I appreciate you taking the questions. Former federal prosecutors John Malcolm and John Flannery, my thanks to both of you.
Thank you.
Up ahead, as promised, we explained we would get into what